$55 million has been earmarked for public interest journalism. How would you spend that money? Given the state of the world and society's ever-changing landscape, several options came to mind when posed with this question. The impact COVID has had on so many aspects of the world is vast, including the news media in New Zealand. In the past year and a half, it has become far more difficult for New Zealand's media to control misinformation, reach the public, and have a meaningful impact on them. From this line of thinking, there were three paths I could go down. One option is to explore fake news, the rising mistrust in the media, and the spread of misinformation on social media. Another is in the vitality of reaching young people who are more and more turning to alternative media like TikTok and YouTube for their news and current affairs. Finally, as an Australian who moved to New Zealand and somebody who frequents international news sites, I have found that New Zealand's media tends to give a view of the world through rose-tinted glasses, heavily sugarcoating the bleak state of affairs in 2021. The first avenue of research that I went down was Trump's favorite buzzword, fake news.
Fake news. We are fake news. The fake news media or press.
Clearly, this is an issue that is affecting more than just America. A government study conducted in 2021 found that just under 1/5 of all New Zealanders hold at least 3 beliefs associated with misinformation, and half of the country hold at least one. The main pieces of false information being circulated are conspiracies about COVID-19, the vaccine, 9/11, and climate change denial. 3 of these 4 are extremely pressing issues, raising concerns about what this means for New Zealand. I explored solutions for stopping the spread of misinformation and how the government is already working towards this goal. Social media is a vital part of this process, places like Facebook being where most misinformation begins. Both algorithm and human moderators are becoming more prevalent across platforms to cut down on the harmful fake news being spread. This, however, is mostly up to the organizations that own these media sites. A great example of a site that struggles with the spread of misinformation and has done little as of yet to curb it is YouTube. Their algorithms prioritize clicks, and so what a consumer is being recommended is not moderated and simply suggests the video they are most likely to watch, including anything from flat earth conspiracies to extreme alt-right content. Through my research, I have found the most effective and lasting solution to help the public fight misinformation is a better education. In the digital age, it is vital that the public is taught how to discern between fake information and viable sources. The sheer volume of information available on the internet means the public must be equipped with the proper tools to access the information. This means teaching digital and information literacy in schools and beginning campaigns that spread tips on how to be more discerning, much like the government's porn safety campaign. I also wanted to briefly touch on another important aspect before moving on to my main point. The young people of the world are gravitating towards social media and alternative platforms for their news. It is important to question whether this is just chalked up to younger generations being less interested and apathetic about current affairs, or if it is a failure on the news media's part to engage with these younger audiences. There have been some efforts, like the news show BTN or Behind the News in Australia, which is aimed at young children. However, it still holds to a traditional media model. It is important in the coming years for media groups to expand into the world of social media, especially YouTube and TikTok. Some groups are already pursuing this, like the Washington Post, who have recently begun a TikTok page run by a qualified journalist. Merriam-Webster defines democracy as government by the people, especially rule of the majority. The key elements of democracy are as follows: choice of representative, participation of people, civil liberties, and rule of law. To maintain this reality, a free press is crucial. This is for 3 main reasons. A free press fights for the truth, informing the population on what is happening in their community and globally. A free press holds the people in positions of power accountable and uncovers conspiracy at all levels, including state. A free press strengthens democracy by informing voters. This point is essential as democracy is only maintained through informed voting from its citizens. A weak press system leads to citizen journalism, often with extremist views, widespread ignorance, and little to no accountability taken by powerful and dangerous people. The job of a free press is to fight for the truth with no biases and spread these truths. Sarah Baker wrote in a report in 2017 that since 1984, when the fourth Labour government was elected, the media in New Zealand shifted to a more neoliberal agenda. Neoliberalism is defined as a political approach that favours free market capitalism, deregulation, and reduction in government spending. The result of this was a more commercially oriented media focused more on opinion and entertainment rather than investigative journalism. Consequently, this has developed into a weak press, which no longer functions as it should. There are little to no current affairs programs that maintain serious journalistic standards. The only weekly current affairs program running consistently with proper funding is Native Affairs on Maori TV. The more frequented current affairs programs like Close Up and The Project are cheap entertainment that hold no journalistic integrity. This is a trend not only in New Zealand but across the West. A wider world example of weak press is the coverage, or lack thereof, of the Stop the Line 3 protests occurring in North America. Line 3 is a proposed pipeline expansion to bring nearly 1 million barrels of tar sands per day from Alberta, Canada to Superior, Wisconsin. It was proposed in 2014 by Enbridge, a Canadian pipeline company responsible for the largest inland oil spill in the US. Enbridge seeks to build a new pipeline corridor through untouched wetlands and the treaty territory of the Anishinaabe peoples, through the Mississippi River headwaters to the shore of Lake Superior. This breaks with treaties with the First Nations people and will in future contribute vastly to climate change and threaten the availability of fresh water. Indigenous groups and allies demonstrate every day in opposition to this in the face of arbitrary arrests and citations. These protests have been continuing for months with little to no coverage. The main platform where information about this is spread is TikTok. This is a major public issue that does not just affect First Nations people, but the entire populations in that area. The failure to properly cover issues like this on the media's part and spread the truth poses a threat to both democracy and people's civil liberties. An example closer to home was the fracking occurring in Southland, NZ. There was little to no protesting around this issue, most likely because of the lack of coverage. Southland was set to become much like parts of America where water is flammable from toxins. Fracking not only affects the resources like food and water around it, but it destabilizes the ground. People within the coal industry argue that as long as the systems are properly regulated, it has no effect on life. However, this negates the tremendous impact coal seam gas mining has on the climate. Had this topic been covered on a weekly current affairs program, diving into the detrimental effects and educating the public on what their government was allowing, it may have sparked more controversy. Another issue that goes widely unreported within New Zealand is the brutal and racist child welfare system. The Indigenous population of New Zealand and other nations have historically suffered from their colonisers tearing their families apart. This trend continues in New Zealand under the guise of a child welfare system, which in reality is based in racism and bias. Similarly, it has recently come to light that the myth often spread throughout New Zealand, especially in conservative circles, that the Moriori people are extinct and were massacred by the Maori people on arrival is false. The myth was perpetuated because it was easier to accept the colonization of Aotearoa if the Maori people themselves were villainized. This version of history was genuinely taught in schools as fact and has heavily influenced many racist views across New Zealand. A subject that might yield an insightful investigation that is playing out right now is the situation in Afghanistan. For many young people, and the population in general, it is important to understand why we were there in the first place, and why some responsibility for the events playing out now falls onto us and the West as a whole. I personally believe that the direction the world is heading in makes it essential to invest in realistic and serious journalism that uncovers these truths and holds those people who infringe on democracy and human rights accountable. A thorough investigation into any of these issues would deconstruct the assumption that Aotearoa is perfect, instead revealing aspects of its dark underbelly and beginning to move towards a better country for all. A free press must be properly re-established in Aotearoa to educate, inform, and protect its citizens. I would direct $55 million worth of public funding into current affairs programs and journalism that holds a level of integrity not seen on TV as of now. A free press is integral in maintaining democracy in this country.